Imagine two horses standing in the same pasture. They eat the same hay, they drink the same water, they live in the same environment. Yet one horse seems really resilient. If it recovers well from training, it rarely gets sick. Small challenges come and go without much consequence. The other horse is different. Maybe it develops recurring ulcers. Maybe it struggles with allergies. Maybe it's always stiff. Maybe it seems slow to recover from exercise. Or maybe one inflammatory condition resolves only for another to appear. Nothing seems dramatically wrong, yet something never quite feels right. Most of us begin looking for answers to these kind of horses in organs or cells, some biochemical or hormonal interaction. And yes, all of them are important. But there's another aspect of health that isn't talked about as much, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So today we're going to talk about that space that all living things live in. So think about it. Our horse's body is made up of cells, but what surrounds those cells? Don't get me wrong, concentrating on the cell has produced extraordinary advances in medicine and science. But every one of those cells lives inside an environment. A muscle cell just doesn't float freely in space. Neither does an immune cell, nor a nerve cell. Every cell in the body exists within a highly organized environment that surrounds, supports, nourishes, and communicates with it. And that raises a question that most of us have never stopped to ask. What exactly exists between a blood vessel and a cell? If oxygen leaves a capillary and enters a muscle cell, well, what is it really traveling through? If a hormone is released in the bloodstream and eventually reaches a tissue, what did it pass through? If an immune cell responds to injury, where does it move? What exists in the space between the circulation and the cell? For a long time, many scientists viewed this space as a little more than just biological packing material, a filler, a scaffold, a substance whose primary purpose was simply to hold everything together. But over the last several decades, that view has changed dramatically. What research discovered is that this space is not empty. It's not passive. It is not merely structural. It's a living, dynamic environment known as the extracellular matrix. So what exactly is this extracellular matrix made of? The extracellular matrix is not just one thing. It's a complex ecosystem made up of structural proteins, water-binding molecules, signaling compounds, fluid, and living cells. Together, these components create the environment in which every cell in the body lives. Let's look at the major players of this extracellular matrix so we can understand it a little bit better. Number one is collagen fibers. So collagen is the most abundant protein in the body and serves as the primary structural framework of connective tissue. It provides strength and organization to things like tendons, ligaments, fascia, skin, blood vessels, and many internal organs. Think of collagen as that scaffolding that helps hold the body together. Without it, tissues would lack both the structure and stability that we see. The second major player in this extracellular matrix is elastin fibers. So if collagen provides strength, elastin provides flexibility. Elastin fibers allow tissues to stretch and then return to their original shape. These fibers are especially important in blood vessels, skin, lungs, and connective tissue that must repeatedly expand and recoil. They help tissues remain resilient rather than becoming stiff and brittle. The third major player in the extracellular matrix is proteoglycans. So, proteoglycans are large, complex molecules that help organize and support the extracellular environment. And one of their most important jobs is attracting and holding water. They create much of the gel-like consistency of the matrix and help determine how nutrients, signaling molecules, and fluids move through tissues. The fourth major player is glycosaminoglycans. We call these GAGs. So, glycosaminoglycans, often called GAGs, are long chain of sugar molecules that can bind an enormous amount of water. One of the most well-known examples is hyaluronic acid. These molecules help maintain hydration, lubrication, shock absorption, and tissue resilience. In many ways, they help create the fluid environment through which cellular communication occurs. The fifth player is hyaluronic acid. Although technically a glycosaminoglycan, hyaluronic acid deserves a special mention because of its importance. A single molecule can bind many times its weight in water. So, hyaluronic acid helps maintain tissue hydration, supports joint function, facilitates nutrient movement, and contributes to the viscoelastic properties of connective tissue. And it's one of the reasons healthy tissue remains supple and adaptable. It's also one of the reasons that we use this in joints. The sixth major player is interstitial fluid. So, interstitial fluid is the fluid that surrounds and bathes nearly every cell in the body. It fills the microscopic spaces between cells, connective tissue, blood vessels, and lymphatics. This fluid serves as a transportation medium for things like oxygen, nutrients, hormones, immune signals, and waste products. It represents the immediate environment in which cells live and function. The seventh major player is adhesion molecules. So, adhesion molecules act like biological anchors and connectors of the extracellular matrix. They help cells attach to their surrounding environment and communicate with it. These molecules allow cells to sense mechanical forces and respond to changes occurring around them. They help connect the internal world of the cell with the external world of the matrix. The eighth major player is signaling proteins. So the extracellular matrix is filled with signaling proteins that allow cells to communicate with one another. These molecules help coordinate growth, repair, adaptation, inflammation, and healing. Rather than being a passive structure, the matrix functions as an active communication network where information is constantly being exchanged. The ninth major player is growth factors. Growth factors are specialized signaling molecules that influence cellular behavior. They can stimulate cell growth, tissue repair, blood vessel formation, and wound healing. Many growth factors are stored within the extracellular matrix and released when tissues are injured or remodeled, allowing the matrix to participate directly in healing. The 10th major player in the extracellular matrix is cytokines and immune mediators. So, cytokines are chemical messengers used by the immune system. They help coordinate inflammation, immune response, tissue repair, and recovery. The extracellular matrix serves as both a reservoir and a transportation system for many of these signals, making it an important part of immune regulation. The 11th major factor is fibroblasts. They are the primary connective tissue cells of the extracellular matrix. They produce collagen, they repair tissue, and they continuously remodel the matrix in response to changing conditions. Researchers have discovered that these fibroblasts are remarkably responsive to mechanical forces. Stretching, movement, exercise, manual therapy, and even acupuncture can influence fibroblast behavior. The 12th major player is capillaries. Capillaries are the smallest blood vessels in the body. They deliver oxygen, nutrients, hormones, and signaling molecules to surrounding tissue. Every substance leaving the bloodstream must pass through the extracellular matrix before reaching a cell, making the matrix the critical interface between circulation and tissue. The 13th major player is lymphatic vessels. Lymphatic vessels help remove excess fluid, cellular debris, waste products, and inflammatory byproducts from tissues. They are major components of fluid balance, immune regulation, and tissue health. Without proper lymphatic drainage, tissues can become congested and inflammatory signals may accumulate. The 14th major player is nerve endings. Embedded throughout the extracellular matrix are sensory nerve endings that continuously monitor pressure, tension, movement, temperature, injury, and inflammation. This means the matrix is not only a structural and a communication network, but also a sensory network. Number 15, and the final major player that we are going to talk about today, is immune cells. Immune cells constantly patrol the extracellular matrix, searching for injury, infection, damaged tissue, and other threats. They move through this environment, communicate with neighboring cells, coordinate repair, and help maintain tissue integrity. Much of what we think of as immune function actually occurs within the matrix itself. So when you step back and you look at this list, a remarkable picture emerges. The extracellular matrix is not simply connective tissue. It's a structural network, a fluid network, a communication network, a sensory network, an immune network, and a mechanical network. Every cell in the body depends on it. Every organ interacts with it. And every aspect of health is influenced by the environment it creates. The cell never directly encounters the outside world. Its relationship with the world is mediated through the matrix. So when you begin looking at biology through this lens, the extracellular matrix stops being a structural support system and starts becoming something much more interesting. It begins to look like an environment. And science is now showing that this ECM, which is the short for extracellular matrix, is as important as the cells themselves because it controls the environmental condition in which the cell lives. So it controls how effectively nutrients reach tissues, or how well fluids move, how efficiently waste products are removed, how inflammatory signaling exists, how adaptable the tissues are, how resilient the organism is, and how effectively the body responds to stress and returns to balance. One of the earliest physicians to recognize the importance of this environment was Austrian physician Alfred Pischinger. Pischinger proposed that the extracellular matrix functioned as a regulatory system, connecting the nervous system, the vascular system, the immune system, the endocrine system, and the cellular environment. His argument was if every signal entering and leaving a cell must pass through the matrix, then the condition of that matrix mattered, and it mattered a great deal. Today, many of the questions that Pischinger was asking are being revisited by researchers studying things like fascia, mechanobiology, interstitial fluid, connective tissue signaling, and cellular communication. Following Pischinger's work, researchers began to recognize that the extracellular matrix is far more than what they originally thought. It performs several critical functions that help regulate life at the cellular level. First, the extracellular matrix functions as a communication network. Every second, cells through the body are sending and receiving information. Hormones, growth factors, inflammatory signals, immune messengers, and countless other molecules move through the ECM environment as they travel from one location to another. Rather than being an empty space, the ECM helps organize, store, release, and regulate many of these signals, allowing cells and tissues to communicate and coordinate their activities. Second, the extracellular matrix functions as a mechanical network. The body's constantly experiencing physical forces, movement, exercise, stretching, tension, compression, and even gravity all place mechanical demands on tissues. These forces are transmitted through the ECM, where cells can detect and respond to them. Through a process known as mechanotransduction, physical forces are converted into biological signals that influence cellular behavior, tissue adaptation, repair, and healing. So now let's move on to the third way that the extracellular matrix functions, because it also functions as an immune network. The immune system does not operate in isolation. Immune cells move through the extracellular matrix as they patrol the body, respond to injuries, monitor for infections, and participate in any tissue repair. The ECM also stores and regulates many of the chemical signals that coordinate inflammation, healing, and immune responses. In this way, the matrix helps create the environment in which immune activity occurs. And fourth, the extracellular matrix functions as a transport network. Every cell requires a constant supply of oxygen, nutrients, hormones, and signaling molecules. At the same time, cells must remove waste products and metabolic byproducts. These substances do not move directly from the bloodstream into the cell. They must first travel through the extracellular environment. The ECM serves as the medium through which this exchange occurs, helping deliver what cells need while facilitating the removal of what they no longer require. One of the most interesting developments in modern medicine is that many therapies now appear to work, at least in part, by influencing the extracellular matrix and the environment surrounding the cell. And some therapies directly target components of the ECM itself. A good example is hyaluronic acid. Hyaluronic acid is a naturally occurring component of the extracellular matrix and is found in high concentration within joints and connective tissue. When veterinarians inject hyaluronic acid into a joint, they are helping restore lubrication, hydration, shock absorption, and normal joint function. In many ways, they're directly modifying part of the extracellular environment. Other therapies do not add components to the matrix, but instead rely on the ECM biology to influence healing and repair. Things like this include platelet-rich plasma, or PRP, as one example. PRP contains concentrated platelets that release growth factors and signaling molecules. These signals influence cellular communication, tissue repair, blood vessel formation, and healing. Rather than replacing tissue directly, PRP helps modify the environment surrounding the cell, encouraging the body's own repair mechanisms to become more active. Another component is IRAP, or otherwise known as interleukin-1 receptor antagonist protein therapy. This works through a different pathway. IRAP is designed to reduce excessive inflammatory signaling within the tissue. By altering the chemical messages present in the extracellular environment, it can help shift the balance away from inflammation and toward healing. Stem cell therapy provides another fascinating example. While many people assume stem cells work by transforming into new tissue, research increasingly suggests that much of their benefit comes from the signals they release. These signals influence inflammation, tissue repair, cellular communication, and remodeling within the extracellular environment. In many cases, stem cells may function less as replacement parts and more as biological coordinators. Another therapy that comes into play here is things like shockwave therapy, because this illustrates another aspect of ECM biology. The extracellular matrix is not only a communication network, but also a mechanical network. So, shockwave therapy delivers mechanical energy into tissue, creating physical signals that cells can detect and respond to. These signals can influence things like blood flow, cellular activity, tissue remodeling, and healing responses. Even rehabilitation and therapeutic exercise can be viewed through the lens of the ECM. Every movement generates mechanical forces that travel through the matrix. Cells continuously monitor these forces and adjust their behavior accordingly. Appropriate movement can stimulate tissue remodeling, improve fluid movement, enhance communication between the cells, and support normal healing processes. Manual therapies such as massage, myofascial techniques, stretching, and osteopathic approaches may also influence the extracellular environment. By changing tissue tension, fluid movement, mechanical loading, and nervous system activity, these therapies may affect how information is transmitted throughout the matrix and how tissues adapt over time. Acupuncture is another therapy and is another example of how a therapy can influence the extracellular environment. Research has shown that acupuncture can affect nervous system signaling, blood flow, inflammatory mediators, immune activity, and mechanical signaling within tissues. Rather than acting on a single pathway, acupuncture appears to influence several of the communication networks that help regulate the environment surrounding the cell. So, what makes these therapies so interesting is that they often appear very different on the surface. One involves an injection, another uses blood products, another uses sound waves, another uses movement, and another uses needles. Yet many of them share a common theme. Rather than focusing exclusively on the cell itself, they are attempting to influence the environment in which the cell lives. In many ways, modern regenerative medicine is increasingly recognized something that Pischinger proposed decades ago. The health of the cell cannot be completely separated from the health of its environment. And perhaps that is the most important takeaway for horse owners. When we think about health, we often focus on individual parts, the joint, the tendon, the stomach, the immune system, the nervous system. But no cell, tissue, or organ functions in isolation. Every cell exists within an environment that nourishes it, supports it, regulates it, and connects it to every other system in the body. In many ways, the extracellular matrix provides an interesting metaphor for integrative and holistic medicine itself. Just as the ECM connects cells, tissue, organs, and communication systems throughout the body, holistic medicine seeks to understand the relationship between those systems rather than viewing them as isolated parts. Rather than asking only what is happening within a particular organ, holistic medicine asks how that organ is interacting with the rest of the organism. The focus shifts away from the individual parts to the relationship between them. Because just as the health of a cell cannot be completely separated from the environment in which it lives, the health of a horse cannot always be understood by examining one organ, one symptom, or one biochemical pathway in isolation. The body is a network, and understanding that network may be one of the most important steps toward understanding your horse's health from here forward. That was a lot of information today, and I tried to do a lot of research for you on the extracellular matrix because it is becoming a really important part of both health and treatment for humans and horses. Thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you guys next time.